contend that you can't understand what's happening in the world today and what has happened over the last several decades without understanding the Council on Foreign Relations.
This latest Nixon work, and they send the guys out there. He has two boys on his hit team to straighten people out, a young Dick Cheney and a young Donald Rumsfeld. You see their pictures. They're young men. They're working for Nixon, and they're batters for Nixon. I was stunned to see their pictures and to read that that's what their jobs were.
That's right.
It's amazing, these guys. They don't go away, do they?
Nixon himself was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations.
Who's the only American president I believe that wasn't?
Gerald Ford wasn't, but then he became a member after he left office.
Was Reagan a CFR guy?
No.
I didn't think so.
He was surrounded by them.
Yeah, I thought Reagan was the one who wasn't the CFR.
He wasn't CFR, but, they surrounded him. There's a wonderful picture of, I don't know, wonderful is the right word, but there's a picture of him sitting down with David Rockefeller, the chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations, in a pre-election party in 1980. In other words, I'm playing your game, Mr. Rockefeller. Just don't get upset by any of the rhetoric.
One of the most interesting things to read about the Rockefeller banking is there is a law. It's called PL 480. It's Popular Law 480 on underwriting loans, and I've been through all of this stuff so many times. But you read it through Gulf Oil and you read it through all these different multinationals, and they would loan, quote, monies into the third world that really were simply, they would return to the U.S. to buy weapons with them. They would do things with them. They would keep people in power who would be favorable to the United States government and business interests. David Rockefeller, or his banking interest, would underwrite the loans, but even if they got burned, then the taxpayer would make up the loan. And if David Rockefeller gets burned for $100 million in some third world despot, the United States taxpayer gave him $110 million for his underwrite.
There you go. Well,
it's amazing to read that stuff, Jack, and know that it's true.
Well, I just wrote a piece. It reminded me when I saw that George Hansen, former congressman from Idaho, had passed away.
Yeah.
In 1979, the Ayatollah took over. The Shah had led Iran, and he seized the U.S. embassy, imprisoned several dozen Americans, and the United States sent an angry note.
Yeah.
Now, 12 days later, the Ayatollah announced that he was about to withdraw his billions from the New York banks. Mm-hmm. And then Jimmy Carter declared a state of emergency.
They froze them, didn't they? Freeze the assets.
Then it was then, not when they seized.
No. I mean precisely. Yeah.
When the banks were threatened.
Yeah. I'm reading. I got to pause here, and we'll come back to you. I began this book, and I've been reading so much I got drawn away from it. It's entitled "Ghost Wars." CIA American interest in Afghanistan. It's spectacular, Jack, of what these guys were doing, and they're muling money into these guys. I mean, left and right, and this idea that. And I love Charlie Wilson's War. I think it's a fabulous book. When they leave, and Charlie Wilson says, whatever you do, don't leave these people alone. We have a foot in the door to do it right, and of course they screw it up. But these guys are bringing, really pallets of money, and there's a guy, Masood, who's murdered by Al Qaeda guys. But he has this conversation with these guys. He said, "Do you really think we just fight for money?" And it's a reflection of the mindset of the CIA that they thought everybody did it for money.
Yeah.
And this guy said, "No, we love our country, we love our faith," and of course. He was the one guy, and he was telling these guys, and he said, and they were offended that they would only do it for money.
I have a good friend who's a retired pilot for one of the big airlines in America. He was a Marine pilot in Vietnam, and then he went into the commercial business. And he told me that he used to fly into Moscow, and they would unload pallets of money.
Sure.
You used the term pallets of money.
Yeah. Tommy Franks talks about it in his book.
That's accurate.
No, Tommy Franks said they're with the warlords in the Northern Alliance, unloading pallets of money. But this book about the ghost, and the guy said, and the Afghan said, how the U.S. These CIA guys are looking at them, and they said they think that all we do this is for the money. Hang on, sir.
Well, it's part of building the U.S. empire that
exactly it goes back to change. Thank you. Hang on, Jack McManus is with us. The website this morning is spectacular, 710knus.com. Jack McManus, John McManus from the Birch Society is with us. It's 13 years tomorrow since 9/11. Are you worried about tomorrow? I was going to ask you this, and I failed to. I don't know why. I just have a creepy feeling about tomorrow's anniversary. Do you share any of that, Jack?
No.
Okay.
No, but every day you could worry about every day what might happen.
Well, yeah. I mean, we have a great guest who comes on the radio show, Robert Spencer from Jihad Watch.
Oh yeah.
And he has a chronicle on his website of how many attacks there have been, terror attacks in the world since that date, and it's staggering how many attacks have happened. So when people say there hasn't been any attacks since the U.S. invaded Iraq is just simply not true.
Yeah. Did you see where Jimmy Carter went and spoke at the ISNA Muslim organization in Detroit?
I saw a blurb on it.
He praised them. He said he wished people would contribute money to them and so forth and so on. These are people who were involved in the money laundering schemes.
Mm-hmm. The mess that is Afghanistan is getting worse. The mess that was Iraq, don't you? I mean, if they wouldn't they love to have Saddam back? The same thing is true in Libya. What do you make of? Well, let me back it up. What do you expect from the speech from the president tonight?
I expect that he's going to talk about how we are going to stop ISIS with limited activity, mostly air stuff, attacks by planes. I don't think he's going to go deeper than that.
Historians project endings. How does this end?
That's a good question. I don't know how it ends. I think somebody's going to have to realize pretty soon that militant Islam is on the march again. There are several times in history when if a Muslim army had succeeded, Western Europe would have become Islam.
Oh, sure.
Part of Islam.
Sure, absolutely.
Go all the way back to we're within 100 years of Muhammad starting the whole religion. But in the 1500s, 1600s, and so forth, the Battle of Lepanto in the 1500s, the Battle of Belgrade, the Battle of Vienna, all of which should have been lost and all of which were won. Is it going to come to that again? I don't know. It certainly seems it's possible. But to equate entire Islam as a peace-loving religion is a mistake.
Yeah, history is a passion, and one of the reasons Isabella and Ferdinand, principally Isabella, they send Columbus to search for the new route is because the forces of Islam will no longer allow what the Polos had done. You can't travel now. They knew China was there. They knew things had happened, but the forces of Islam stopped Spanish, Christian, European traders from crossing into that part of the world. And so that was, again, it's what's taught in school that somehow Columbus thought the world was round and Isabella was really a lovely lady and she gave some crown jewels and he sails off and he discovers America. It couldn't be further from the truth. In fact...
And one of his big reasons was to spread Catholicism.
That was
he was a very intense Catholic.
Well, that was two. But they were also possibly had been people who had converted to save themselves from the pogroms. But they also could no longer travel as the Polos did and as the trade routes, the Silk Road. Those were shut down by the forces of Islam. And so, when you start to... How do I say this? When you start to really look at the truth, it always comes away quite different, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Peter, while I'm on the air, I'd like to mention there's going to be a Birch meeting on tomorrow morning, Thursday morning, 9:30 a.m. They meet at O'Meara Ford Conference Room. The car dealers there have a nice conference room. I've spoken there myself. It's very nice.
Give it a plug. When is it again, Jack?
9:30 tomorrow morning at O'Meara Ford Conference Room. That's 104th and I-25 in Thornton. And people can go there and learn a lot more about the JBS. There will be a program, and there will be books to buy. I can't recommend more highly a book that we've published called The Shadows of Power. I've written several books myself. People ask me which is the best book to read to understand what's happening. I tell them this book. I didn't write The Shadows of Power. A fellow named James Perloff did, a good friend of mine. And his book goes into the history of the Council on Foreign Relations, its clout, and so forth. And it's important stuff. People got to realize it. This is what really is going on. And it figures into the empire building that we talked about with Cheney and Rumsfeld and those characters, and it figures into a lot of other things. But let's not make the mistake, however, that it's just a case of people trying to make money.
What would you like to leave us with this morning as a final thought?
The final thought is that the world is very close to being in the grip of people who are seeking world government, power. Yeah. Not just money, power. And power is the motivation, and they're getting close to being able to accomplish that. These are the people that are behind the scenes with the United Nations, with NATO, and so on. NATO being a creature of the United Nations and so forth. When Obama said the other day, August 28th, he said that we don't have a strategy yet. He was waiting for the people at the United Nations and NATO to give him the authorization to proceed whichever way he wanted to proceed. Our country goes to these power places and asks for authorization to act. Mm-hmm. And you got to realize that one seeks authorization from a superior, not an inferior.
Absolutely.
And that's where we are today. It's time for the United States to have number one as its main concern. Number one is the United States. We are not the rulers of the world. We are not the policemen of the world. And to get more heavily involved in some of these things that don't threaten us, while we allow a real potential threat of militant Islam, is suicidal. And
well, when people misunderstand it, when they say it's a death cult, it's not. But how do you, when an 18-year-old kid believes that if he dies, he will go to that paradise, that perfumed garden.
He'll go to paradise, and he'll be ministered by virgins for the rest of his life.
He's not. It's not a death cult. People they don't understand that.
Well, that's what motivates a lot of these guys. You know, a guy will leave the United States or France or England and go to ISIS and fight with them alongside.
That's right.
And even hope to become a martyr, so that he can go and spend eternity as promised, which is.
If you want to believe that foolishness, what that guy said, you can't stop that.
So let me tell people again, O'Meara Ford Conference Room tomorrow, 9:30 in the morning, 104th and I-25 in Thornton. Learn more about the John Birch Society, or if you want, give us a ring at 1-800-JBS-USA-1. We're glad to hear from anybody. We'll share our point of view on this and that. Or you can go to the internet, jbs.org.
Thanks, Jack. We'll talk ASAP. Be safe. Thanks, brother.